Anyway, let me rewind a little bit and go back to where I was. We're talking about starting a business in Portugal. I think you've done that, Valerie, so you might have something to say about that. A few of you will, I think, about starting a business in Portugal. So I think we've got the sound sorted out now, which is great. As I said before, Michael Brodie, CEO of OurNet, the community-focused social network, is here to join us. He started a business in Portugal. I've started a business in Portugal. I think some of you might have done that as well. So it'll be lovely to hear your views on that. But I don't think I can start really without going to the context, the background at the moment, that of course we are in quite a uncertain and difficult space in terms of the economy and being in business at the moment, and how we all earn our livelihoods, frankly, at the moment. So that's the theme today. Bit of context on that before we bring Mike on. We like to start with the weather as well, don't we? And a few of you are giving your weather updates, which we'll go to in just a moment. But I can see Lisbon has got a week of beautiful weather ahead. Currently 20, a high of 27 today, rising to the 30s for the weekend. Porto, not quite so hot. Cloudy day actually today forecast, but certainly tomorrow and the weekend looks nice and sunny. Highs of 29 at the weekend. Coimbra area, 36 on Sunday, 30 on Saturday. Cloudy day today though, but some really nice sunny weather coming, especially towards the weekend. Faro, not as hot as you might expect. Coimbra is going to be warmer, in fact, but Faro certainly very comfortable and lovely. 29 the high today, rising to 30 by Friday, and 27 and 30 on Saturday and Sunday, respectively. So some lovely weather. We can say, can't we, that summer is well and truly here in Portugal. Let's go and look at a few of your comments. FD Devane, bon dia, Carl, bon dia to you. Tudo bem, FD Devane. And I think we're all good now with the sound quality. Oh, I see, I've been called Mr. Roboto. I don't know why that was, but there you go. These things happen sometimes. Good morning to you, Lisa. Good morning to you, Valerie. Good morning to you, Maria. Owen is here as well, who's offered to cook breakfast live on the Good Morning Portugal show, which I'm really looking forward to. I used the term Portuguese breakfast advisedly. Shocked when I looked that up on Google. But he's going to be going with a traditional Portuguese breakfast. Lovely day ahead in Vila de Rei, clear skies and sunshine. Thank you very much, Owen, for that weather report. And Paul says, okay, start again. Bon dia, Carl. Yeah, we're there now. Bon dia from UK. You're coming through loud and clear, says Jeff. Thanks, Jeff. And good morning to you, Valerie. Lovely to have you with us. Valerie of Spencer Beck's, a nice advert there. It's all in the name. Sound is okay now. Thank you very much, Valerie. Bon dia, gente bonita. Lovely people. I love it, Owen, how you bust out the Portuguese. Good morning. Cloudy and drizzly here, but getting better this weekend. Stay safe. Yeah, that's pretty much it, Barbara, how the weather's looking at the moment. And certainly here in Coria, in the Aveiro district. Let me just get my thermometer. Did we all buy one of these from Lidl when we saw it in the middle aisle? 22 degrees inside, 20 outside at the moment, just over 20 is what the probe is telling us that hangs outside the window here. So, yeah, I think we can look forward to a good day. So let's have a look at some of this context, this economic context now, before Michael Brodie of OurNet joins us. I'm sure he'll have something to say about this, especially the Facebook news. But first, I'm going to go to the news from the Portugal News, of the site of that name, the Portugal News, which I'm sure quite a few of you will be familiar with. Number of guests and overnight stays in tourist accommodation fell 94 and 95% in May. I can't quite make sense of this, but you will get the picture here. The tourist accommodation sector should have had 157,800 guests and 324,300 overnight stays in May, but is 93.9% and 95% less than the year before, announced in the National Statistics Institute, INE, on the 30th of June. Quick estimate by INE compares with the year-on-year changes in the number of guests and overnight stays in April, when declines of 97.4 and 97% were recorded respectively. So I'm struggling to make complete sense of that and how it's written, but you can see that is staggeringly poor occupancy and tourism for Portugal there, which obviously is going to make a massive impact, excuse me, on the Portuguese economy. Let's share with you another now. This is about eating out and how Portuguese people feel about eating out at the moment. and almost half of Portuguese people are still too concerned to eat in restaurants, says a poll, despite all protective measures in place. And I mean, part of the problem, of course, is eating out can't be much fun, can it? If you're sort of socially distanced and you're wearing a mask, it just takes away. I've said this all along. Kind of goes against everything you want from an eating out experience. You know, the intimacy and the relaxation. The protective measures aren't conducive to that. Portuguese nationals are still not comfortable, this article says, in Portugal resident going out to enjoy a meal in a restaurant. The dismal truth has been revealed by a poll compiled for tabloid newspapers Jornal de Noticias and Correio da Manhã. It shows that 48% of those questioned are still too concerned about the situation to eat out. But here's the thing, 44% of those are citing lack of money for their reluctance. So it's not so much about safety, it's because they're brassic Lynn. They haven't got the money to do it. And this is a situation perhaps more and more people may find themselves in, unless we come up with something a little bit smarter in terms of, you know, how we resource ourselves and how we run our economy. Good morning from Fundao. Good morning to you, Julie and Clint there. And Ali, of course, numbers were down by over 90%. They were all closed. All right, Ali. Forgive me for stating the bleeding obvious, but just trying to create a picture there. And Lena, bon dia, Carl. Sunny but windy here in Alcantarilla near Silves. Thank you for that. It's a weather report, Lena, and lovely to have you here this morning. Someone else who's probably started a business, I'm not sure. But if you do have a view, chip in with that as the show develops here. Let's bring Mike on now to talk about this Facebook story next, where Mark Zuckerberg, his personal fortune has been slashed by 7 billion. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Carl. Good to be with you all.
Yeah. It's lovely to have you here. It's Wednesday, and we've been talking to you about OurNet, your yes, it is community-focused social network, OurNet, and I'm guessing you will have something to say if we have a look together at this story from the Daily Star of all places.
Wow.
Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg sees 7 billion slashed off fortune. Let me press the button and share that with everybody now. Look, here we go. Daily Star. Absolutely. This is the modern newspaper, isn't it? Riddled with clickbait and advertising and stuff. It's a very busy website. OurNet's a lot simpler to look at. OurNet.news if you want to take it yourself. Yeah. Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg sees 7 billion slashed off fortune after CocaCola row. The Facebook CEO has seen billions wiped from his personal fortune after a number of high-profile advertisers dropped support amid backlash over how the company censors hate speech. What do you say about this, Mike? This sort of pretty past for Zuckerberg and Facebook, and how the whole thing of politics and fake news is now upsetting his advertisers, from where, of course, all his money comes.
Yeah, indeed, and well, I'm not sure that's true, but and it's interesting. Is he going to have difficulty going out for a meal in the evening? I mean, I suspect he's going to be okay, because he's not one of the 44% that is a bit too brassic to go out for a meal.
True.
But it's interesting, is how can you suddenly lose 7 billion? Where does it go to? And the answer actually is he's being lent 7 billion less because of the issues. He never actually had 7 billion. But he was worth 7 billion because the banks invested money, or not just the banks, but other people and banks invested huge amounts of money in Facebook, which pushed the value of their shares up, which made his share value then worth however many billion it was.
Yeah.
And that's just been recalculated. So the people that are actually who've lost the money isn't particularly him. But it's the bank, it's the people that lent in the money, which is the people that own the banks, effectively. So their investment is actually worth less. And as they created the money in the first place, that it was because money fundamentally in the modern world is debt. As the banks created the money, it's actually not much of a skin off their nose. It's just they're getting a little bit less on their shareholders' returns. So it's the whole thing of how money works in the modern world, which is completely bizarre, completely out of control, and I would argue completely corrupt. where someone can suddenly lose 7 billion overnight. You know, it's not he buried it in the garden and can't find it anymore.
Yes, indeed. Well, it wasn't stolen exactly, was it? It wasn't there and disappeared. It was a change of valuation, I suppose. So it's a bit disingenuous and misleading to call it a loss, really, isn't it? It's just a revaluation. Whereas for the people, those 44% of Portuguese people, for example, there who can't afford to eat out possibly, or are worried about spending that sort of money, there is a real sense of loss, isn't there, to what they need to cover their costs, which is a different situation altogether.
Totally, because they are the real economy. They are the people who have or haven't got money to spend with each other, to buy services or goods from each other. And what has happened in the, so people say it since we came off the gold standard, what has happened is vast amounts of money have been printed. It has almost all gone to the top 0.1% of the population. Very, very few people, including Mark Zuckerberg. Money has come away from people in the real economy, you know, which is people buying and selling food, people buying and selling goods and services. So people actually haven't got the money to pay each other to do stuff. It's not that there's no one to do stuff. So there are plenty of people who are quite happy to cook, and there are plenty of people that are quite happy to go and eat. But there are issues around coronavirus, obviously. But there are plenty of people to do all that thing. But what's missing is the cash flow, which enables us to do that.
And that's a problem we haven't really solved, I would say, and it's only been made worse by the pandemic. Now, you've got a solution for that built into your social network, which is quite adventurous and futuristic and quite brilliant in many ways. Let's return to that in just a moment, because I think this is a real problem, and we definitely need real solutions. And the old models, you know, that are sort of crumbling around our ears at the moment, don't seem to have anything useful to offer except let's print and pump more money into the situation, hope that helps. But we see that doesn't really help in any long-term or useful way. On a more mundane level, before we go to that and all those sorts of possibilities, the theme today is starting a business in Portugal. Let me just rewind you to that point. You came to Portugal with the idea of basing OurNet here, and how has that gone? How have you found starting up a business, an organisation here in Portugal in this culture?
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating, and the reason is it's cultural. I have been brought up to have a certain understanding of how the world works, and there are various sort of rules that I learnt as I grew up and I lived in the UK about how money works, how business relationships work, etc., etc. And I came to Portugal assuming that all those would hold true. And what I found is a completely different culture where, you know, things like in the UK, I started a business for £19 online. I had a limited company at the end of it after half an hour. It cost me £19 and I was on my merry way. In Portugal, it took me about, I don't know, €1,000 and probably about 6 months with endless stamping and signing. And what I've realised is that the big difference between the UK and Portugal is, and I think I've got this right, but it's always difficult to know because of the cultural differences. But I think in Portugal, all contracts of any sort are mediated through the government. That, as far as I can make out, I can't actually have a contract with you. It's meaningless unless it gets stamped and approved by the government.
Oh, okay.
So I have it notarized and signed off, and then it's stored in various storage facilities, all with multiple signatures and whatever. And it looks as if I can't actually come to any agreement with you without going through the government. Now, and I believe that's embedded in Roman law, as far as I can understand. Mm-hmm. So it's very different to the common law approach, where in the UK I could have a contract with you. If you were to not deliver, I would then go to court. Here you go to court, but actually it would take you 6 years to get to court. So the state actually has a different meaning to people than it does in the UK.
Okay.
And it's just everywhere, as far as I can make out.
All right, so big cultural difference to be aware of. And I suppose the first lesson is don't make any assumptions. Don't think it's like where you may have come from, because it may well not be. Most likely it isn't. And then the second lesson that comes from that is to get professional help with that. I think it's quite a difficult thing to do. This is my experience, which has hurt me a little bit, has taught me the benefit of getting professional help and support. And we were going to have Diogo Bandeira with us this morning, somebody we've worked with at the Science and Innovation Park, the PCI, in Ilhavo, just outside of Aveiro, which is part of Aveiro University's one of the many initiatives around the country, which I think is really strong and a really sort of positive part of the what do they call it, the ecosystem here. The way that startups are supported all over the country. Specifically for us, we had some help with our work with the University of Aveiro's incubator system. They call it incubation, and the professional help there, I think. I mean, what's your comment on this, Mike? Would you agree it's good to get professional help, and these schemes are pretty cool too if you're a startup?
Totally. I think attempting to navigate the system here with the understandings that I brought from the UK is a total no-go. I'm still 2 years later. I'm dealing with the fallout from that.
Okay.
But the thing is, along with it, because it seems to me to be massively bureaucratic. But then again, some Indian friends that we've got at the incubator tell me that compared to India, it's really bureaucracy light here. So it depends on your perspective. But I think it's hopeless to attempt to think that you can understand how it's going. Partly because it is so complex that no one really understands it, or hardly anyone really understands it, and all the officials you meet interpret it in different ways, and they all sound very, very knowledgeable because they need to. So and someone will tell you something, and you can go back 2 weeks later and meet someone else, exactly the same issues, and they'll give you a different answer. So, and that is how Portugal works. There's the really pretty rigid organisation, but then everyone actually finds ways to get around it.
Interesting, very interesting, and hence the benefit of being with an incubator, for example. Now, the PCI and places like that, because we had some experience of this in Lisbon as well, didn't we? The people who set out to help startups, I think, are especially useful, which isn't going to be, that's not going to be useful to every kind of company, is it? I mean, it's there in the name, you need to be a startup. But the great benefit with those places is that it is a place as well as a service. So you can often find yourself in a shared workspace, or even have your own office. And along with that comes all the professional help you might need, and you might get as part of your contract, which you can get a grant for as well, because there is a charge for it, but it's offset against like an innovation grant, because understandably Portugal wants to support this sort of effort and this sort of entrepreneurship. So as part of your package, you might get an hour of legal help, an hour of accountancy help, and the feeling that you can knock on someone's door and say, I'm struggling with this, and they'll say, yeah, we all struggle with this, but this is what you need to do about it. And you're with other businesses. You're with other businesses in the same condition, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's they have been amazing to help navigate the system. And of course, the culture also comes in here as well, because they cannot imagine what I'm expecting. Or how I'm expecting it to be. So very often, sort of lack of communication means that I don't understand why things are happening or what they need to be. And they're so accommodating. They've been absolutely amazing. They're sorting out issues around taxation and pensions and all sorts of stuff for me at the moment.
Fantastic.
And very, I mean, if I was them, I'd be calling me a complete idiot for the mess I've made of everything. They've been absolutely brilliant.
And they're not doing that, which is very sweet of them, isn't it?
Not to my face.
Good, excellent, glad to hear it. Maria Costa says, very interested in the topic of starting a business and particularly mentorship with an established business owner. I don't know if that's a request to you, Mike. If this is something you can address, I'll be very appreciative. This is part of what the incubators do, but Mike, you wanted to answer that.
Yeah, I'm really happy to share. I find it difficult to call it expertise because I still feel as if I'm sort of struggling around in a swamp of peculiarity. But I've learned quite a bit, I guess, over the last 2 years. I'm really happy to share. Well, depends how many people are watching this. I was going to say with anyone, but
and who they might be, of course. Subject to certain conditions and ethical considerations. Michael may well be able to assist you with that. And we, of course, did think of doing some sort of pitching thing here on the Good Morning Portugal live stream, where if you did have a business idea that you wanted to start in Portugal, come on the screen, pitch it, share it with us, do a 60-second pitch or an elevator pitch or something like that. I'm sure Michael will come back and turn up for that. And other people, I'm sure, we're an opinionated bunch here. We'll have something to say about your business, but all in a good way, all in a positive way, within the spirit of helping out. Because I think that's the thing, isn't it? A new country, new business, you're up against it in many ways, and you need help. You need a bit of a community to refer to.
And for me, that happily brings it back to the issue of Mark Zuckerberg and his 7 billion and money. And the fundamental purpose, it seems to me, of money is to help us support each other. You know, is to help us live in community with people we don't necessarily know, and create structures which enable us to look after each other. Because, you know, fundamentally, there is no, we can't save for the future. All we're doing is we're saving for money so that someone in the future can look after us when we need someone helping us change our pants or whatever when we get into our protein cure. You know, that's fundamentally, we need someone when we're older to look after us.
Yes.
And that's what saving's about. And but actually, it seems to me so much nicer, so much more positive if we actually start looking after each other now rather than waiting to pay money to people to look after us later. And
amazing. Yeah,
because obviously our later is someone else's now. As well, it will be our now then, obviously.
This is really deep philosophical stuff, but you know, I would expect nothing less from you, and in many ways from the people of the Good Morning Portugal live stream. If you've got a specific question about starting a business, before we look deeper into how our net could be some sort of economic renaissance for communities, before we go there, if you've got any questions, more sort of mundane things, official things about starting a business, mine, for example, if I could share my anecdote here, I went to my local Câmara to register myself as a business, and this goes back to what you were saying, Mike, is about how, you know, the government needs to know what you're doing. That's how it feels to me anyway. I mean, obviously it's the same with governments all over the world, but you get a greater sense of that here, is that everything is mediated and registered through the government or local government. I went, and you know, with the language barrier, I registered a business through the green, are they called the green invoices, the green book? Because it used to be a physical thing back in the day where self-employed people would write in the green book, which I think was probably in duplicate or triplicate, so the government did have a record of what was being taken and made, so that obviously it could be taxed. And that's become an electronic system, obviously, like so many. I mean, that's the other part of Portuguese business, isn't it? Is so much of it is done through the Finanças portal or the MBWay system. The electronic systems are quite incredible, quite complex, and obviously quite difficult if you don't speak the language. Although you can get it translated simultaneously, which is the beauty of Google Translate. But in the culture clash, the language barrier that I had, I think I registered for too big an income, which means that I then have to charge people 23% EVA tax, which is like the value added tax here, which is okay if you're dealing with a business who are used to paying EVA. But if you want to charge individuals, if you want to raise an invoice with an individual, an extra 23% is quite an eye-watering extra amount of money that you're raising there on behalf of the government. So you might want to think about that. I mean, that would be my strongest piece of advice to anybody, is get yourself very au fait with the taxation level so that you can kind of manage crossing it or staying under it, so that you don't bring about an unnecessary sort of levy of tax that might upset your customers or upset yourself through a lot of extra admin that you might not necessarily need to do.
Yeah.
So, and again, it comes back to getting professional help.
Yeah, and it's also the sort of professional help, because people here talk about accountants. Now, my perspective is an awful lot of accountants here are what we would call bookkeepers in the UK.
Okay.
They're people whose job it is to make sure that the material is presented appropriately to the government, to the financier, not people who give advice on strategies. So, but I think they all call themselves accountants, but I think we wouldn't in the UK. Okay. So you can't expect. It's not that there aren't some that do have capabilities that we would call accountants in the UK, but I think a lot of them are fundamentally bookkeepers who know how to do things appropriately, mediating between you and the government, as opposed to being a strategist to help you plan your finances properly.
Okay, so get that clear with whoever you talk to. Are they a strategist or basically a bureaucrat, I suppose, would be the difference there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's not to diminish the role of the latter there, because you know, I've got some comedy gold with the conversations and situations I've been in with my local accountant, helping me submit invoices through the electronic portal. It's deeply complex, the portal, and you need some help. And there I am with this guy who doesn't speak any English, and we just have to use Google Translate and smile and laugh a lot with each other in his office until the pandemic stopped that. It's there's a lot of comedy value, but there's some heartache as well if you don't get it quite right. Comment from Ali. I wholeheartedly agree with the idea of sharing experience and knowledge with others. I set up as an artist, as a sole trader, and then created the Algarve Society of Artists to bring artists together to share our knowledge and support each other. So valuable. That's really lovely, Ali. And it sounds to me like you have gone into the territory there of what sort of business structure to have, and you created a society, which I think is quite a popular thing in terms of NGOs in Portugal. And of course, Michael, you want to explore the not-for-profit structure. If anybody does have expertise they can send our way about that, that would be very useful as well, because I think that's quite a new thing here, isn't it? The idea of a not-for-profit that isn't solely there in a Facebook style to create massive returns for its shareholders.
Well, do you know, I mean, there are all sorts of community action organisations, but I think, again, going back to everything's got to be mediated through the government. Whilst there's nothing to stop you sitting down in a pub to talk about things with friends, the moment people here seem to form an association for all sorts of things, local neighbourhood associations, etc. And they all seem to be registered. They all seem to have proper contracts which are drawn up by lawyers, etc. And as far as I can make out, the registered with the government as well. So it's part of it seems to be part of the culture that these things are all registered with the government, but they are individuals who might be pressure groups, might be just social groups or whatever. So there are lots of things going on here, sort of off the radar.
Okay, and Maria saying, important point about accountants. I want a strategist that can refer an accountant. Okay, but a strategist is more important to me at the moment. Yeah, good thinking, Maria. I think as you start out on the right footing, which is what you seem to want to do there. One place to go would be the Expats Portugal Forum. And you know we're creating a deeper relationship with Expats Portugal. They were with us on a Monday. But the thing about their forum is you get access to quite a lot of veteran expats who would have started businesses years ago in Portugal and will have learned the hard way. And some of them might be willing to talk about that and share their pain as well as their pleasure of starting a business here in Portugal. So Expats Portugal, I would recommend just bung your question in the forum there. And it'll be in a place where you can find it. Because the problem often with social networks, which we'll return to in just a moment, is you ask a question and then within a few minutes or hours, like, where's that question gone? You know, these things can disappear in the hurly-burly of social networks. And I'm finding that forum structure is a little bit more helpful in terms of having a thread rather than a very transient thing that just disappears into the distance as soon as you posted it. Ali said we couldn't call it a society. This was the Algarve Society of Artists. We couldn't call it a society specifically, as that would have been a sociedad, and they are complicated structures. So we are just a group. Thank you for pointing that out. That's a little clue, isn't it, to the complexity of what we're dealing with here. Bon dia. How do you find out if you have an advisor and not an accountant? I think you should ask them for sure. The other thing, of course, to say, Jeannie, conversing with us from Belgium there, is word of mouth, right? Because that is, with all of these things, that's the strongest recommendation, isn't it? Is not the word of mouth that says, I've just found this amazing accountant and we had a really nice bottle of wine together. That's okay, but the word of mouth you want is like, I've done 2 tax years with this accountant and they've saved me this amount of money and put me straight on this, that, and the other. They are worth their weight in gold, those sort of recommendations, I think. So if you've got one of those here in the Good Morning Portugal community, please share and or do ask for that referral on our page, in our groups, on social media as well. So let's return to social media. Not shutting down on answering questions about starting a business in Portugal, or if you've got more to say, please do. But just going to shift the focus of the conversation because we've got Michael Brodie here, founder and CEO of Valnet, a competitor, we should say, right, to Facebook. You've not always been comfortable with that, Mike, have you, being a competitor? But there he is, your arch rival.
Bless him, bless him. So he's opened up all sorts of possibilities for the world. So I don't want to demean anything that he's done. Well, I might want to, but I don't know. But he has created something which is incredible. Because 15 years ago when Facebook started, I think it's about 15 years ago, there was no way of talking to people the other side of the world, apart from the telephone. And Facebook has really opened up connections across the world. My own opinion is it's done it in a rather ham-fisted way, which has created side effects which I don't like. But nevertheless, it has done that. It's produced the technology to make all that possible. Is providing a context for us and a shoulder to stand on. So, I think he's been a great man. I don't know whether I like him or not. I don't know the guy. There's a lot of stuff he does which I don't like, but fundamentally, I think he's made a real contribution to the world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, here we are, live streaming on his platform.
Amazing.
The technological innovation of Facebook is quite extraordinary. The problem they find themselves in, of course, now is giants of advertising. CocaCola, where would CocaCola be without advertising? It is a brand. It is the brand, isn't it, that has managed to perpetuate and increase itself all over the world through advertising. That's how they've done it, isn't it? It's by putting their brand in your face, constantly reinforcing that. However, they have paused advertising on Facebook for 30 days, which will be a massive loss of income for Facebook, because on the one hand, we have news that Facebook are unwilling to take care of, take responsibility for. They say, we're not a publisher, we're a platform. People say what they need to say. We're working on it. We're dealing with fake news. We're stopping people being nasty to each other. And it's not good enough for Coca-Cola. They don't want their adverts to be next to some racist outburst, understandably, because it detracts from the goodness of their holy brand, as they see it. How can this be done differently, Mike?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Facebook say they're not a publisher, and yet they are using central control to try and control what appears where, which is actually is what they've always done, because Facebook have chosen to present you with posts and streams from people it thinks are going to generate its income. This is. People say that we should get paid because we're the crop that Facebook are harvesting. Actually, I would argue that the users of Facebook, are actually the soil that the advertisers are grown in, which are harvested by Facebook. So we're basically soil, which is just giving up our attention to Facebook. And Facebook find that their system creates an advantage to people that want to spread dissent, want to spread polarization. So I just think Gary's comment, it looks great, yes. Quite right, yes. He's getting on a bit though. But so the design of Facebook actually encourages people to get attention for themselves, to polarize opinion, so the most outrageous things appear. You know, you talked about clickbait earlier. It's basically all clickbait for our attention. I'm just as subject to that as anyone else. But that is the design of the platform. You very kindly mentioned OurNet. We're actually looking at having a platform where complete control is in the hands of the users. And it might sound rather idealistic, etc., but actually it's all perfectly practical. It's just that we need to develop it and get people starting to use it.
And the interesting thing for me in the conversation we've had about your vision for it is that on the one hand, we've got Facebook who are denying that they are publishers when it comes to the difficult bits, but they are publishers because they choose what goes next to you, or they are making conscious decisions, albeit using artificial intelligence to match up what they think will appeal to you with the best advertising proposition for their true customers, who are the advertisers. With OurNet, you're in a different place. You're seeing the old potential. And we talked about this briefly last Wednesday, didn't we, about like the good old days of the internet? Because there was a time, of course, where people thought it could be an amazing tool for humanity. That's Facebook doesn't look a lot like that at the moment. Let's face it, the way it's gone, the values it's pandering to or has built itself on don't necessarily lend itself to being an amazing tool for humanity. But this is what was our great hope for the internet, wasn't it? It's like free information at your fingertips, people helping each other, communities being able to organize themselves online of mutual benefit. You're still holding that flame up, aren't you, for OurNet?
Totally, yeah, because it's all possible, and it depends on the context in which you construct it. When I don't know what Facebook's intent is, but what I do know is that businesses are based upon maximising shareholders' return. So that's the fundamental purpose of the business, is to maximise shareholders' return. So if that is the purpose of it, then Facebook is doing its job brilliantly. I think there are other forms of measure which are perhaps rather more useful to us as human beings. Owen, where do you sign up? www.ournet.news. I do have to say it's still in a very beta form. We are working on it. There are some embarrassing issues with it at the moment. We're hopefully going to get those resolved by the end of this weekend. But it's designed to bring people together in their locality and in their interest groups. It's designed to make it easy for people to sort of converse with each other, to make contact, to find people that are interested in things you're interested in. It's designed around how we act as social beings. And one of the critical things about it is that I have a reputation on it, and my reputation is given by all the people that read and comment on what I provide. So people with great reputation, their stuff rises to the top. The intention is, and we haven't got it yet, that there will be advertising, but you as an author can choose what sort of advertising goes with your articles or your comments, and that you will get some income from it. So the intention is to make it into a whole economic ecosphere where people are benefiting from contributing to each other. It's
and that's what I really love about it, that potential. And that's why, Mike, actually, before I move on to what I was going to say there, that the great thing about signing up and contributing an article, not least, is to replace my domination of OurNet at the moment with my articles. Yes. So I'm sure Mike could welcome anyone else who wants to contribute an article from their locality, if only just to remove my stranglehold and domination of the site. I'm the equivalent of Donald Trump on Twitter when it comes to Owlnet. Please join and knock me off my my self-imposed, self-created pedestal there. Economic ecosphere, Mike. Bringing this full circle, we painted a picture of what's going on in Portugal at the moment. Crash in tourism, pandemic-induced crash in tourism. Portuguese people afraid to go out and eat in the restaurants. This is part of Portuguese life, right? People are worried they haven't got enough money. They might be worried about the health side of it. And before, like I said before the pandemic, it wasn't looking brilliant. We were only just recovering from the 2008 recession crash. It had taken 12 years to get anywhere near some sort of economic health. Some were saying it's going to crash again because that is in the nature of the boom and bust economics we've been employing for the last 100 years or more. We need something different, don't we? We need something different. And you're suggesting there, and what I'm trying to do is pull together all these strands here, is how can we use this wonderful invention that is the internet, that can connect people, that can allow for the free flow of information, that can allow people to build their own reputations rather than just the loudest, most controversial voices rising to the top so they can be surrounded by advertisers because they get the most attention. How can this be done differently? How could someone earn a living online in their locality so they could live in a nice homestead? I'm talking about myself here. So they could, live a nice, comfortable life without having to move to the city like everybody else, to join a corporation, to be in this boom and bust cycle of how the economic system works. What role might Owlnet play in that?
Well, it's so fantastic, Carl, because obviously, if you ask that question, then thank you, Owen. If you ask that question, then the answers you'll get to it are different to how can I build a business which will make me money. It's how can we build something which nourishes us as human beings, social human beings. We're competitive as well. Nothing that we do as human beings is ever going to make everything right for everyone. The world doesn't seem to be like that. I've been here long enough to know that there are unfairnesses and differences and all sorts of stuff. But actually, I'd like to live in a compassionate society where compassion is a high priority. I also want to survive. I also want comfort. I also want sort of heating in the winter. There are all sorts of things. I love the results of technology. I don't think the answer is to go back to living off grid, in a field. Because actually, you still need the solar panels and the maintenance, and you still need machinery that other people are doing to keep all that going. So yes. I think, and automation is making things so much easier to make. Our brain is amazing if we ask the right questions. So we need to start asking, how do we do this? And I've asked that question. I'm coming up with an answer. I don't know if it's the right answer. I don't know if it's one that people will like. I don't know if it will be usable. But I think the most important thing is that I've asked the question, and I'm looking for answers to it. And the more people that come up with answers, because the human potential is so vast that people come up with all sorts of answers that I haven't begun to think of. I think it's the question is the most important thing.
Okay, and so it's like Owlnet is the place to put that question and answer that question collectively and come up with a solution that's going to work for more people, if you like, to be a bit more useful than some of the what would they be, deviations or how it hasn't quite worked out as we'd hoped. Let me put it that way, because I think that is people's problem with Facebook, isn't it, and social media and technology to a great extent. It's gone a quite predictable way, isn't it? It's gone this way that we've seen of the last few hundred years, probably, where the big players get the game. They kind of they seize upon the technology that's become available that might have been for the benefit of everybody, and a smaller number of people benefit from that. and the majority of people become the resource of that, don't they? Become the product, become the asset, the soil, as you put it. So what you're suggesting is like, Anna, it's a work in progress where we collectively answer those questions, and we can have some influence, which of course you don't get much influence anymore, do you, over the likes of Google or Facebook? Anna is at a stage where we can still be collectively involved in this, answering this question.
Yeah, and we're open to listen.
Fantastic. Gary, who made the comment about sliced alone, and we agree with you. We need space to express our worries. Gary again here. We need space to express our worries and concerns with the freedom to talk and debate, even though you may see some extreme views. Isn't it better to see the whole spectrum of the topic and not be censored? It would be brave and sometimes difficult, but it needs to be done. Is OurNet that place?
So amazing. So Gary, thank you. That's so amazing. Absolutely. We need to be able to. We need to stop having taboo things that we can't talk about, because actually those taboo things are the really difficult things we need to talk about as human beings. How do we coexist with extremists? What creates extremists in the first place? What creates all the perversions that people are capable of? If we can't talk about that, we hide them away. Well, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a lot of this stuff coming up at the moment. The whole thing about paedophilia, about sexual abuse, about domination, about sort of slavery backgrounds. There's a whole world of stuff which was all nicely glossed over, that we've never talked about, and has resided in our subconscious. We've got to get this stuff out. Absolutely. And you see OurNet as a place where that can be done. Yes, and it scares me, because as it should, because actually it needs to be handled. We need to handle it with a degree of maturity. Yeah. And I don't always know that I'm capable of that degree of maturity about everything. But, okay. Yeah, and I suppose we will wrap up now. But the problem we've got, of course, in the response to these things coming up, as you've put it, the taboos are in our face, aren't we? The failings of the economic system, the failings of many institutions are very present to us now, right? Yeah. And they are coming up, and the immediate response to them is quite emotional, as it would be. Okay. But I think what Gary might be alluding to there partially is the way we're dealing with that is with some of the loudest, most emotional voices, and like people saying, this is what you should do about that. Yeah. This is the only right way to respond to something like that. So on the one hand, you've got the kind of apparent craziness of world leaders. Then you've got the social justice movement, who are saying these people are terrible and wrong, and the only right way of doing this is to do this X, Y, and Z. And then for a lot of the rest of us, we're thinking, actually, it's a bit more nuanced and deeper and worthy of further debate than just saying this is what you should do. Yeah, because we're complex beings. The world is complex, and actually we need to learn how to listen. I know I've been speaking an awful lot, actually, and I do like the sound of my own voice. But we need to listen to uncomfortable viewpoints, because actually fundamentally, every single person that I've ever met, as far as I'm aware, their sole purpose is how to survive and make their life a little bit safer and more comfortable. And if you speak to people, for them and their families, however inappropriately they're doing it, that's when it comes down to it, that's what people are trying to do. Absolutely, and being concerned about who's going to change their pants when they're old, as you put it earlier on. Which is a classic, but it's funny because it's true. It is funny because it's true, and it's like that's why we're saving up all that money and that's why we've got retirement a certain way. It's so bonkers. This sounds like a good part of the solution to me. I'm worried as well, because look, Ali has registered. Watch out, Carl Munson, I'm coming for your purse. Excellent. No, Ali, it's about collaboration and community. It's not about competition. It's about competition as well, Carl. Because that's what we do. We're competitive as well. All right, that's what we have to handle.
I, like you, Mike, I'm a little bit scared.
Yeah.
And a wonderful note to end on there. Absolute respect, Michael. I think an acknowledgement of your vision and your aim here with our net to do something a little bit different, to provide something a bit richer for humanity than what we've currently and so far experienced with social media. So thanks for that, Gary. And echoed here from Owen as well. And I think the
Wow.
echoing is of respect to you. So thanks, Mike.
I'm touched.
Will you come back next Wednesday and we can talk about it further? And
Do I have to talk again?
You'll have to, I'm afraid. And it'll be a chance for everybody to report their bugs about the website to you next week. Thanks very much, Mike. Really appreciate it. Any more questions, mentorship, whatever, however we can help each other here in terms of starting a business, how you might be able to help Mike start this business, this organization, this enterprise to provide a richer social landscape online. Do step forward and do that. Thank you to everybody who's registered this morning. We'll see you there, and bring it on, I say. Challenge my perch, if you will. Let's see what happens with that, because I too have a competitive aspect. Cheers, Mike. Yeah. The logo. What's your Portuguese like? Do you want to say Portuguese goodbye to everybody?
Oh, it's terrible. I just cannot. I can't do it.
So you'll say farewell. I'll bid you adieu.
Yes, au revoir, old chaps.
Okay.
Super.
Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow. Take care and bye for now.